Hi, I'm Anisha, and today I'll take you back more than 1,000 years, long before modern cargo ships, GPS, or European exploration of the Indian Ocean. I want you to imagine the Indian Ocean not as an empty sea, but as a busy highway full of merchants, ports, and giant trading ships. My topic today is the Arab Dhow and the mathematical um, logic of early Indian Ocean trade covering the 9th to the 12th century. During this period, the Indian Ocean connected three of the ancient world's largest economies, Abbasid Iran, the Tang China, the Srivijaya Sumatra, and the vessel that made this connection possible was the Arab Thought. So here is a picture of Phanom Surin, 9th century Arab Dhau, which we will talk about later on. But what exactly a dhau? A dhau is a traditional Arab sailing ship used in the Red Sea, Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea, and Indian Ocean. So by the 9th century, around 800 CE, Arab dhaus were already highly advanced ships connecting the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, and China. Now let us look at how the dhau was built. Many people think that ancient ships were primitive, but the evidence shows otherwise. Michael Flecker's study of the 9th century Belitung shipwreck found that the ship was built by stitching wooden planks together with coconut fiber rope without using any iron nails at all. But when you first hear about this, it sounds fragile, right? But it was complete opposite. A stitched hull could actually bend with the waves and survive damage more easily, while a nailed ship could actually break apart. So Flecker's study shows that the belly tongue was designed to be fast, stable, and strong enough to carry huge cargo across long distance voyages, more than 1,000 years ago. And this single ship transported thousands of valuable goods, and even the lead used for the balance was also tradable. And now let us actually look at what the ship was carrying, because the cargo shows how advanced this trading system actually was. So John's studies of a study of Belitang and the Fanam Surin shipwreck shown in the 9th century trade was not just a small luxury trade. It was a large industrial system. The Belitang alone carried more than 60,000 Chinese ceramics, and most of them mass produced in the Changsha Clan of China. So, and the guy's research shows that the goods were being produced on a very large scale, mainly for foreign export and trade markets. Think about what that means. An entire Chinese ceramic industry was adjusting its output volume to match the carrying capacity of the Arab horse sailing on the Indian Ocean. The factory schedule was actually being set by the monsoon departure window, and both shipwrecks carried the same type of Guangdong storage jars, and these jars have been found from the Persian Gulf to the East Africa to the Sumatra. So they worked like standard. They actually these jars actually worked like standard shipping containers that were recognized across many ports. And even a more interesting detail is that the one of the jar from the Fanam Surin ship had a Pahlavi inscription naming an Iranian merchant as the owner of the cargo. So this shows that the 9th century Indian ocean trade was highly organized and with written records and legal trade agreements. And the underlining of all this was the monsoon, the mathematical backbone of the entire system. Sebastian French explains that the monsoon was the main system that controlled Indian Ocean trade, and it decided when the ship would travel, where the merchants would leave, and how far the trade networks could spread. The southwest and the northeast monsoon allowed the ships to travel on the predictable schedule across the Indian Ocean, because the trade routes followed specific seasonal timing, and merchants could plan production, credit, and trade more efficiently. Now let's talk about why these matter historically and in modern world. First of all, the significance of the system's durability. In 878 CE, a political uprising in China led to the sacking of Guangzhou and the murder of thousands of foreign merchants. And this led to the disruption of Persian Gulf to China shipping and shipping routes. And a system, and because of this, a system um, but as this was not built on a political um, support, so actually this system didn't collapse, and it actually reorganized into a multi-scale network through Southeast Asian intermediaries. The system survived because it was built on profit calculation, not on actually political support. And the second point concerns the Muslim mercantile world that the Dhao built, as French demonstrates in his research that the expansion of Muslim maritime commerce across the Indian Ocean was shaped by the merchants, not by the sultans, and forged by the commercial logic rather than military quests. And Muslim merchants actually created permanent trading communities from Persian Gulf to the Malabar coast to Sumatra. And the Dhao spread not only the goods but also Islamic laws, language, and trading systems. And the third point is the 12th century. Rather than declining after the disruption of Persian Gulf to China route, the system actually expanded, and French documents what the historian called the Asian sea trade boom of the 12th century, a period of major economic growth across the entirety of monsoon Asia. The organized trade system created by the 9th century Thou continued and expanded on a much larger scale, and this made long distance trade more stable, efficient, and widespread. And not only that, the Thou also affected on the language and geographical aspects. As we further discussed, the English word monsoon comes from Arabic word mausim, and also the names of the navigating stars still used in the modern celestial navigations are Arabic names. And recording the centuries when the night sky was an Arab pilot's working instrument. Flecker's research further shows that the shipbuilding method used on the Belitung is still used in Oman today, and this means a ship design created for the Indian Ocean in the 9th century still works even in the 21st century, and that is the strongest possible evidence that the original design calculation was correct. To conclude, the Arab Dhow did not simply inspire modern global commerce, it created one of the world's first truly global trading system, which is organized, connected, and remarkably advanced for its time. So that's all from me, and thank you.
Everyone, I'm Abdurrahman Saad, and now we'll talk about Muslim and Chinese navigational synergies and port stabilization. In the 13th to 15th century, when many people are asked to imagine Indian oceanic trade before European colonialism, they often picture a peaceful trading world where merchants simply exchange spices, silk, luxury goods. However, this image is a bit misleading. Indian oceanic trade was not peaceful in the sense of being free from conflict. It was commercially advanced, of course, but politically very fragile, where piracy, diplomacy, religion, and maritime power all existed at the same time. Now, what made this period historically significant was not the absence of conflict, but the existence of a system that managed this conflict without territorial conquest. How this system emerged, that's the question. And this system emerged through the interaction between Islamic merchants network and Ming China's maritime intervention under the Admiral Zheng He. To understand why Zheng He's diplomacy succeeded, we first have to understand the world he entered. Now, if we look at here, it's the map of the Indian Ocean. So, long before Chinese fleets arrived, The Muslim merchants had already established an informal but highly functional maritime order across the Arabian Sea, the Persian Gulf, East Africa, South India, and Southeast Asia. This system was deeply influenced by Shafi school of Islamic law, which became dominant in these maritime communities. Now, why is this important? Because it was a time where there was no international laws, and Muslim scholar and merchants created something close to an informal legal system governing trade. It regulated contracts, core obligation of port authorities, profit sharing, treatment of foreign merchants. This meant a Muslim merchant traveling from Aden to Calicut would expect a similar legal system and trading norms from here to there. So, in many ways, Aden, Calicut, Hormuz, Malacca function not only as trade hubs but as connected legal communities. So, before Zenghi arrived, Indian Ocean already had political stability. So, what's the problem? The problem was piracy. This place was deeply rooted into it, and some of these pirates, especially in this Malabar region, these pirates were uh, at, in leagues. These pirates were in leagues with local rulers. So it was a big problem, the piracy, and this is where Zenghi becomes historically significant. Because now, before we look into that, who was Zenghi? He was a Ming admiral sent by Yongle the emperor in the beginning of 1404. He didn't suddenly invent the Indian oceanic trade. Rather, he entered through this area and strengthened it. So, what's specially about Zenghi's success that it was based on synergy, uh, meaning cooperation between Chinese naval power and the Muslim merchant networks. So, first there was navigational synergy. Chinese fleets possessed advanced shipbuilding compasses, but they had to rely on Muslim merchants' knowledge of the monsoon winds. And then there was culture and diplomatic synergy, and this part is more often than not overlooked. So Zenghi himself was Muslim. He was born as Mahi into a family connected to Islamic pilgrimage traditions. This mattered because most of the ports he visited, such as Calicut here and all the other ports and Malacca, these ports were controlled by Muslim communities, and they often saw him not as an outsider, but rather a brother, kind of a brotherhood was formed. He was not an outsider. So he was culturally legible to many trading communities. His fleets also included Muslim interpreters fluent in Arabic and Persian, so it allowed them to navigate both language and legal customs. This made diplomacy much easier. But his diplomacy system was not purely peaceful. We should avoid romanticizing his role. He did stabilize port through diplomacy, but there was also force. For example, he suppressed pirate warlord somewhere around here in the Strait of Malacca. His name was Sen Zui. Uh, he also mediated political disputes and incorporated rulers in the Ming tributary system, such as there was one dispute between Calicut and Cochin here, and he supported the Cochin, and later the ruler of Cochin had to give the Ming dynasty tributes. But though he did use force, there is an important distinction between the Ming intervention and the European force, which would later come. The Mings were only interested in tributes, diplomatic prestige, and stable trade routes. Meanwhile, they did not attempt any territorial conquest or try to monopolize commerce. This is a sharp contrast with the Portuguese after Vasco da Gama's arrival. Following the fall of Constantinople in 1415, the Ottomans had the control of the trade routes, so it forced the Europeans to search maritime routes to the Asian market, and the Portuguese entered the Asian market after the Ming China had already withdrawn from. Now, there's the critical part. Why did they withdraw? It was because there was some political shifts within their own country in the Ming China, and there was a Confucian thought that they shouldn't spend money on overseas and all that. So they had to withdraw from here. And after he withdrew, 2 decades after his withdrawal, the Portuguese came here. So the Portuguese did not introduce violence because violence already existed. Now, Vasco da Gama, when he came here, there was an power vacuum. The Muslims couldn't have the security that the Ming provided. So, unlike Zhenghe, Vasco da Gama did not work with the existing laws. Rather, he introduced a cartas system where trade became regulated through military coercion. Now, this is historically very important because Portuguese did not introduce violence. The violence already existed, but what they introduced was the monopolistic form of violence that dismantled the legal and cultural systems that the Muslim merchants had relied on for centuries. This shift marked an earlier maritime order based on cooperation between local trading cultures and external naval protection. Finally, this history is still relevant today. Why? Although the modern world is very why modern China's Belt and Road Initiative, which was launched in 2013, often refers Zhenghe as a symbol of peaceful trade and connectivity. Now, although the modern world is very different, the comparison raises an historical question. Can global trade be stabilized through cooperation and infrastructure, or does great power involvement inevitably become extractive? The 15th century Indian Ocean offers an interesting take on this. It suggests that trade can function without conquest when power is used to maintain order rather than monopoly, and local systems are incorporated within the system rather than being destroyed. To conclude, the relationship between Muslim maritime networks and Zhenghe's voyages represents one of the history's most fascinating examples of pre-modern globalization. It shows us that trade networks require more than ship and commerce. It requires trust, legal systems, diplomacy, and biosecurity. For a brief period in the 15th century, the Indian Ocean achieved that balance until a different model of maritime power arrived. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fayaz and I'm here to talk about how Portuguese cartography and armed trading vessels challenged traditional maritime communities from 16th to 18th centuries. So before I begin, I want you to imagine something with me. Picture a huge ocean, the Indian Ocean, for hundreds of years. That's basically a giant busy marketplace. Ships from Arabia, India, East Africa, South Asia, they're all sailing around trading spices, gold, silk, fabric, and etc. And the key thing here is it works. Everyone has their routes, everyone knows the rules, there's a system, and mostly it's peaceful. Muslim merchants in particular had built this incredibly sophisticated trade network over the centuries. They knew the winds, they knew the ports, and they knew the people. Now one day someone shows up and says, actually this is ours. That's actually what the Portuguese did, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. So let's go back to the late 1400s and early 1500s. Portugal is a tiny country on the western edge of Europe. It doesn't have the land, it doesn't have the population, it doesn't have the resources of bigger empires, but what it does have is ships, really good ships and really good maps. Now here's something important. The Portuguese didn't discover the Indian Ocean. People had been sailing for centuries. What the Portuguese did was figure out how to get there from Europe by going around Africa. And once they got there, they didn't come as traders wanting to join the system. They came as conquerors wanting to control it. This is a really important distinction. You might have heard of Zheng He, the famous Chinese explorer who sailed massive fleets through the Indian Ocean about a century before the Portuguese. But Zheng He's approach was completely different. He came with gifts. He built diplomatic relationships. He traded peacefully. He was a peace. His ways were peaceful, basically. His whole thing was, let's be friends and do business. But the Portuguese, on the other hand, their whole thing was, we have cannons. So what exactly? How exactly did they take control? If we break it down simply, first they targeted the most powerful traders in the Indian Ocean, which were the Muslim merchants. These merchants had dominated Indian Ocean for a long time. They had the relationships, they had the knowledge, they had the roots. So the Portuguese specifically went after them, attacking their ships, capturing their ports, cutting their trade. Second, they built what they called feitorias. Now that's a Portuguese word, but think of it like a fortified trading post. Basically, it means as a factory. It directly means factory, but in the contextual meaning, it stands for fortified trading post. Imagine a small town that is also a military base, also a tax office, also a shop, and all at the same time. Goa in India is a famous example. The Portuguese would set up these most important, most strategic points along the ocean, basically the checkpoints of the sea. If you control the checkpoints, you control the flow of everything passing through them. Third, and this is the most fascinating part, they invented something called the Carta system. So this Carta system, this is how it worked. So basically, if you were a merchant sailing through waters that the Portuguese claimed, you had to carry a special permit called a cartas, that was issued by Portuguese crown. It was basically a license to sail. If you didn't have one, or if you refused to get one from them, the Portuguese Navy had the right to stop your ship, seize your goods, or even destroy your vessel entirely. Think about how crazy that is. You're an Indian merchant whose family has been sailing these waters for generations. Suddenly someone shows up from thousands of miles away and says, you need to pay us and carry our paper, or we'll sink your ship. That's not trade, that's extortion. And it completely transformed the Indian Ocean from an open, free marketplace into what was essentially a toll road controlled by Portugal. Now, why does any of this matter to beyond history a lesson? Why does any of this matter beyond the history lesson? Here's the thing: the patterns the Portuguese set up didn't disappear when Portugal eventually lost its power. They got copied. The Dutch came next, then the British, then the French, and they all looked at what Portugal had built, and they said that's a good idea. The idea that European power could use military force to dominate the sea routes and extract wealth from other regions. That became the template for centuries of colonialism. And actually the legacy goes even further than that. If you ever heard of UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the law of the sea. That's basically the rule book for international waters today. It's a massive international agreement that says things like ships have the right to sail freely through international waters. No single country can just claim the whole ocean. Trade should be open and fair, and etc. So, and here's what's interesting. In many ways, UNCLOS exists because of what the Portuguese started. Because once you have one empire saying these are our waters, eventually the whole world has to sit down and agree on rules to prevent that from happening.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I will discuss my section of our broader topic, cradles of circulation. So my part is stream power, colonial cables, and the shift from the seasonal to fixed schedule logistics. For centuries before the 19th century, trade across the Indian Ocean depended almost entirely on nature. Merchants relied on monsoon winds to travel between East Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, India, and Southeast Asia. Ships could only sail during certain seasons, meaning trade was organized around environmental rhythms rather than strict timetables. This system had existed for hundreds of years and shaped the economies and centuries of Indian Ocean port cities. However, during the 19th century, this system changed dramatically because of two major technical developments: steamships and submarine telegraph and submarine telegraph cables. This technological transformed the Indian Ocean from a seasonal trading network into a fixed schedule imperial logistics, stream controlled largely by European colonial powers, especially Britain. The first major transformation came through stream power. Unlike sailing ships, stream ships did not depend on wind direction or seasonal weather conditions. Coal-powered engines allowed ships to travel more predictably and according to fixed schedule. This meant merchants, colonial governments, and shipping companies and organized trade much more efficiently. Um, so in my opinion, this was not simply technological improvement in transportation. Steam power fundamentally changes the balance of economical and political power in the ocean, in the Indian Ocean. Earlier maritime trade networks were relatively flexible and flexible and then flexible because merchants adapted to monsoon cycles, but steamships required expensive industrial infrastructure such as cooling stations, modern docks, repair facilities, and imperial naval protection. Because Britain controlled much of this infrastructure, steam technology strengthened colonial dominance over trade routes. We can especially see this through the growth of major colonial ports. Cities like Bombay become central commercial hubs because they were connected to global steamship routes. This port was no longer just local marketplaces. They become strategic centers of empire, finance, and industrial shipping. Trade become faster and predictable and increasingly connected to global capitalism. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1969 also played an important role in this transformation. The canal significantly reduced travel time because Europe and Asia making steamship uh, transportation even more profitable and efficient. Britain quickly recognized the importance because it connected to the empire more directly to India, which was considered to the jewel of the British Empire. But steamships alone could not create modern logistic systems. The second major transformation came through submarine telegraph cables. So, before telegraph, information could only travel as fast as ships. Merchants often waited weeks or even months to receive news about cargo prices, market conditions, weather, or political developments. This created uncertainty in trade and communication. I think the development was just as important as steam power itself. Steamships improved the movement of goods, but telegraph cables improved the movement of information. Together, these technologies created a new form of global connectivity. The Indian Ocean became part of an integrated imperial communication network linking Europe, Asia, and Africa. However, while these technologies increased efficiency, they also expanded colonial control. Britain dominated many of the submarine cable routes and used them for military coordination, commercial management, and uh, political way. In other words, communication networks become tools of empire. Another important issue is labor. Historian of this labor, and in my opinion, this shows that technological modernization was not neutral. Steam power and cable communication are often are stream power and cable communication are often presented as symbols of progress, but they also reinforce racial and economical inequality within the colonial system. These benefits of faster trade and communication were not sharp equally. Colonial powers gained enormous economic advantages while many local workers faced harsh conditions in limited rights. Even today, we will still see the legacy of this 19th century transforms. Modern global shipping systems, container ports, and international supply chains continue to rely on fixed schedules and rapid communication networks. Many of important Indian Ocean ports established during the colonial period remain major centers of global trade today. So in conclusion, steamships and submarine telegraph Indian Ocean from flexible monsoon-based trading world into a centralized imperial logistics network. Stream power reduced dependence on nature. Telegraph system communication and colonial powers used these technologies to strengthen economic and political control. Although these innovations increase the global connectivity and commercial efficiency, they also depend on imperial domination and unequal labor structures. So thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Zawad Tosif and today I'm going to talk about digital ocean and modern geopolitics. When we think about an ocean, it's usually waves and the water, but today I'm going to talk about Indian Ocean, which is something more. It's a massive liquid database. Today, I want to talk about how technology like AIS tracking is changing the way we look at blue economy and also our global security. So, what is AIS? Firstly, let's talk about AIS, also known as Automatic Identification System. Think of it as a modern era version of a lighthouse. So, not only a lighthouse, it's not just like the past lighthouse that is in a cliff, and a light on a cliff. It's a satellite-based networking system that helps us to track down ships which contains products or various kinds of things, and we can use it to monitor their trade route and also where they have been, which we couldn't have done before. So then comes the rise of the dark fleets. However, this technology has also created a new kind of geopolitical chess game. We are seeing the rise of the dark fleets, ship that intentionally turn off their radar to hide their trade route or also their activities. This is called digital privateering, or also known as gray zone conflict, where major power uses data to gain advantage, minor the ancient trade rivalries of the past. So, protecting the blue economy. This brings us to blue economy. The stability of our global economy depends on maritime security. We need data to ensure safe passages through checkpoints and manage our marine resource. Tracking this helps us to find about our illegal fishing, piracy, and also naval movement that isn't just technological risks. It's also essential to keep our region safe and stable. So, data as infrastructure. Finally, we have to realize that AIS data is a critical form of infrastructure. By using this data, nations can predict trade threats and optimize how they should extract resources. In the modern world, controlling this digital layer of information is just as vital as controlling the physical port themselves. So, in conclusion, from the Bay of Bengal to the wider Indian Ocean, the digital and the physical world have merged. Understanding this digital navigation is no longer optimal. It is a key aspect of our economy's growth and also for our national security. Thank you.